We come together today in prayer and in thanksgiving for the many blessings that God has given us through St. Patrick. You know the history about St. Patrick, that he was born probably in Britain somewhere, and that he, when he was 16 years old, was captured by some pirates and taken to Ireland, where it was a totally pagan country. And there in Ireland, he was made to be a tender of sheep, or possibly even of pigs. He came from a well-to-do family in Roman Britain. And for 6 years, he was there in Ireland, suffering from the cold, from deprived of his family. He suffered a great deal. One night in a dream, he was told to go 200 miles and he would find a boat, which he did, and he escaped from Ireland. But it was during those years that he really prayed every single day. He says that before that capture, he really wasn't listening to the priests, and he wasn't listening to his parents, and he wasn't even listening to God. But in those times of stress and in captivity, he discovered God again and became very close to him. And that was the beginning of his call to be a missionary in Ireland. When he finally got back to France, I guess it was, and he studied there, and he was consecrated a bishop at the age of 43, and the Pope sent him to Ireland. He had a dream one night, and it was someone reading him a letter, and it was from the voice of the people of Ireland, and it said to him, "Boy, we want you to come and walk among us again." And he was so moved by that, he couldn't even finish reading the letter. He woke up from the dream and knew in his heart that he had to go back to Ireland. And so he went there as a missionary to bring Christ to this pagan nation. And you know the story. He was certainly very successful. In a very short amount of time, the whole country of Ireland became Christian and Catholic. And it was a great missionary effort on the part of Patrick. He suffered a lot. There's an awful lot of legends about St. Patrick that people have made up over the years. We picture him with a mitre and a crozier in our statue. But actually, bishops didn't wear mitres and croziers until about 300 years after Patrick died. So we dress him today as bishops would. But he certainly, the mitre and the crozier don't make the bishop. It's the man and his holiness who make the bishop. And Patrick was truly a wonderful bishop for the country of Ireland. And you and I, all of us who are of Irish heritage, give thanks to God today for the faith that has come down to us through the faith that our grandparents and great-grandparents have from Ireland. And that's what we celebrate today. Today is the 169th anniversary of St. Patrick Parish. On March 17th, 1848, this parish was founded. And we can celebrate Mass today in the season of Lent with great solemnity because it is a patronal feast of St. Patrick, our patron, as well as the founding of our parish. 169 years, that same faith that Patrick promoted in Ireland and fostered among our ancestors is the same faith that we are here for today. And this church, in a sense, we are to be, when I was mentioned in my homily last week how we owe a debt of gratitude to all the people that built up this parish over the years, those who built the first church, those who built this one in 1898. I remember being astounded. I had a funeral for one of the great-grandsons of the workman who worked on this church building. And he shared with me the fact that his grandfather, his great-grandfather, the family shared that they carried all this sandstone from which this church is built. They carried it on a horse and buggy, a horse-drawn buggy, so to speak, from Berea all the way to here. Can you imagine the effort that must have taken? Just one of those stones weighs a ton. And to carry all those stones from Berea to here to build this church one by one. They were people of faith and commitment to God, and people who wanted to build the best church that they could, and they did. And we're privileged today to be here to continue the existence of this parish and to continue to make it grow and continue to worship in this place. The purpose of this church building is to give worship to Christ, to worship God. And not only that, to receive all the sacraments that we receive through this church. So it's a day of great thanksgiving for the gift of our faith. St. Patrick labored. He was a man of humility and courage. He often said, and especially in his confessions that he wrote, that he was a sinful man. But he counted, and he was not that well educated either. He really didn't like to study. And he was embarrassed at times because of his lack of abilities in Latin. But what God gave Patrick was a heart like Christ. And I think that was the one thing that was needed most of all to convert the people of Ireland. He brought them the love of Christ. And I see that in my own Irish family. I think of my grandmother, Mary Garrity, who died on St. Patrick's Day, I think 17 years ago today. And she was a real woman of faith. I think of my great-grandmother, Sarah Garrity, and she too, a great woman of faith. Grandpa was always on the fence a little bit, great-grandpa, and she was always trying to get him to do things, but she had medals and rosary beads and Sacred Heart badges and everything pinned all around his bed. And at nighttime, she'd sprinkle him with holy water. And she'd say, if it's the last thing I do, I'll save your soul. And I believe she did. And Grandma Garrity, as you know, she was housekeeper here for Father Kelly for a number of years. She lived in an apartment just across the street. And a woman of great faith, great faith. Praying the rosary, loving God, was so happy to have a son and grandson who were priests. And she was a character too. In fact, she told me one time that Father Kelly was a lot younger than her, and that she was babysitting for him when he was a baby, and she dropped him down a flight of stairs. And she told him that was probably the lump that gave him his vocation to the priesthood. But all in all, I give thanks for my grandparents and great-grandparents who passed on the faith, who didn't do it theologically, but they did it by the way they lived. And that's our calling too. It's our calling too to live the virtues of St. Patrick. His one desire was to bring people closer to Christ. And isn't that what our one desire should be too? The aisle of this church should remind us that when we walk down it, that we are called to draw people to Christ. We should all be in this pulpit knowing that by our lives we should proclaim Christ. On the altar, which is a symbol of Christ himself, when we receive the benefits of his suffering on the cross, we should offer our sufferings with him. And in all those things, we imitate the faith of a great saint. So all of America today is Irish, and all of America today is celebrating St. Patrick's Day. And we're privileged to have him as our patron saint here at St. Patrick's Church. And I'm certainly privileged to be the pastor here today, too. And so thanks for being here this morning, and may the blessings of St. Patrick be with us always. The Loric from the breastplate of St. Patrick is so worth our meditating on. He writes, Christ shield me this day, Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left, Christ when I lie down, Christ when I arise, Christ in the heart of every person who thinks of me, Christ in the eye of everyone who sees me, Christ in the ear of all those that hear me. The breastplate of St. Patrick. That should be our goal in life, that everyone who encounters us should encounter Christ. And so may the blessings of St. Patrick be with all of us today, with our parish, and with all the people of Ireland today. May God bless them and bless all those who have done so much for this parish in its 169th year.